What about the good carpenter? Did he love his tools? What could he have taught us, this yin to the bad carpenter's yang? I'll begin here because I think it's a good question to ponder in a setting like this among Vim and NeoVim users. In fact, it is the first question I asked myself when I was invited to give a talk at this conference. You see, I was initially hesitant. What could I possibly say that I hadn't said already? I'd already spoken twice before at this conference, and while the response was great, I didn't want to repeat myself.
Giddy after that.
A little emotional. That's such a thing. And he's right. How he brought you into this community and
that man Vim. Okay, we all that man Vim. Sri Lanka.
It's not like I'd moved on from my Vim and NeoVim adventures. I had, after all, spent the last 2 years since my last talk continuing to hack around with Vim and NeoVim. When I started using Vim around 2021, I struggled with a fairly unwieldy VimRC that lacked any structure. And while it worked great for me, I knew it would require a lot of polish if I wanted to convince other writers to give Vim or NeoVim a go. Luckily for me, things had started changing in the NeoVim ecosystem around 2023. NeoVim distros had become more common. These distros had a similar goal: reduce the friction of migrating to NeoVim while demonstrating that it was possible to transform this powerful text editor into a fully fledged IDE. And after test driving all of these distros, I too had become a little more ambitious. Could I create an integrated writing environment, an IWE, on NeoVim? Why not? All the building blocks were out there. It just needed someone to put it together for writers. Each of these distros, NVChat, Kickstarter, AstroVim, convinced me that I was on the right path. But molding them for purely writing use cases was proving to be way more difficult than I had anticipated. Every attempt at customizing these distros to my preferences resulted in NeoVim breaking. This was the first distro whose modular config structure was easy enough to understand even for a user like me, less programmer and more hobbyist coder / code monkey, who, as I've said multiple times in this forum, has a habit of doing dumb shit on his computer. All this to say that this talk is 2 parts. How I took LazyVim and molded it to be an IDE so that other writers can write, edit, and world build at the speed of thought. And partly it is an attempt to answer the question of why, reflecting on why it is that some of us are so drawn to the tools of our craft. There is a quote, often incorrectly attributed to Abraham Lincoln, about taking more time to sharpen the axe than to chop the tree. But what if you didn't have an axe to sharpen in the first place? Young writers almost always end up with traditional word processors. I was no different, and while Microsoft Word and Google Docs had served me well, I did, after all, write my first novel, First Utterance, using these very same tools. I never gave thought to sharpening these tools, and because they were big, they were unwieldy, a chore to work on, and frankly, they looked ugly. Coming across Vim and NeoVim and learning of its extensibility was the first step in building this IWE. So, how? Okay, deep breath. I cloned LazyVim. My first attempts at customization, plugins that are meant for pros, Markdown, Org Mode, and LaTeX in that order. I was very surprised to find that my changes hadn't broken NeoVim. Okay, surely something has got to break after I add, I don't know, fountain syntax, so I can write screenplays. It works. Okay, note taking. You mean to tell me I can build an entire Wikipedia of my mind, a second brain, using NeoVim? Great. Oh, before I forget, some basics. Spell checking, thesaurus, that works too. I also wanted fast searching, not just of the files themselves, but the content within the files. Done. What's next? Version control. Done. Version control while collaborating with others? Check. Microsoft Word comes with Copilot. It's very fancy, but what's this? OVIWrite has built-in support for running local LLMs. That's a fancy way of saying that OVIWrite has AI that isn't a privacy nightmare. Just plug in your local LLM of choice and you're good to go. What about some nice to haves? What about translation? Done. Having writer's block. OVIWrite comes with a tool to help you clear away the cobwebs before a writing session. What's that? You are an organizer? Cool. Here's org mode, only the greatest plain text standard for organizing your life. As a bonus, and this is completely unintentional on my part, OVIWrite also turns out to be a great tool for looking up large corpuses of text. Here is me searching for the word pestilence across 15 large texts, including religious scripture, mythology, epic poetry, and Shakespearean plays. Did I mention that OVIWrite works on the phone, at least on Androids? It does. I realize my talk so far is short on technical discussions, so here's a look at some auto commands that make life easier for me. And thus we come to the question of why. Why did I attempt to make an IWE with NeoVim? I have two answers. One is a selfish reason. I want to be able to write, edit, and world build at the speed of thought. Because if conferences like this prove anything, it is that perhaps there was a good carpenter who did love his tools, and good carpenters love their tools as much as they love their craft. The other is more egalitarian reason. At its best, the free and open source software community proved great tools shouldn't belong to a select few. Such tools should be in the hands of anyone, anywhere, who knows how to wield such tools. It is this egalitarianism that resulted in me coming across Vim and NeoVim 3 years ago. It would be a shame if I didn't share what I see and learnt with other writers who may be looking for a writing companion that would allow them to write, edit, and world build at the speed of thought.